Welcome, everyone, to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. And Evan, why don't you introduce your special guest today?
That's right. He's my buddy for 40 years, Nikita Breznikov, former manager of Nikolai Volkoff. And when I say manager, I mean shoot manager on the road, up and down those highways. If anybody knows about the wrestling life, it's Nikita Breznikov, who's written a great, great book that I've actually read. And I don't read a lot of wrestling books. When It Was Real, about the WWF of the 1970s. And by absolute sheer coincidence, we are taping this on April 18, which is the second anniversary of the death of Bruno Sammartino, who was one of our childhood heroes. I am proud to present my buddy Nikita Breznikov. How are you today?
Thank you, Evan, and hello, buddy. And yeah, it's a solemn day, but what a tie-in, because, hey, there wasn't a day went by we didn't talk about Bruno. And the impact on our lives, it was always just overwhelming. Today, people watched wrestling, any kind of form of entertainment, and okay, that's nice, let's go get a pizza, let's go do this. We lived it. We still living it for me, 50 years now. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I started watching in 72. That's 48 years ago. No exaggeration, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, to my generation, which is a little bit past where Bruno was in his prime, the concept that he held the title for 9 straight years, and he was untouchable in that era, and yet still managed to fight good matches. He wasn't a Brock Lesnar who, only fought 1 or 2 matches a year type thing, but he was in the ring fighting every possible challenger that he could get his hands on. Was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Bruno, he had a sense of a genuine. He didn't have to come out. He never screamed on an interview. Even with Zbyszko, when that heat was hot going on, he would say something. He would start to go off a little bit, and then he would calm himself down. He didn't have to scream. He didn't need music. He didn't need costume. He just needed to be Bruno, and that's all we needed to. And it was great. What a love affair.
And let me just add to that. The word that Nikita just used is love. When Bruno walked down that aisle, people loved that man. Pedro also, Pedro Morales. People love them. And I resent when a younger fan does he was just a brawler. He wasn't Harley Race or Nick Bockwinkel. It's apples and oranges. Harley Race and Nick Bockwinkel were great in different ways. But people who were not there in the 1970s, and Nikita and I were, when Bruno walked down that aisle, there was a feeling of not only love in the air, but the building shook from sheer charisma. Yeah. And you can't say that about some of the other champions. They might have been tremendous, tremendous wrestlers and technicians, maybe more so than Bruno, but the love and the draw. You're talking in Madison Square Garden, they used to bill it as 22,092 as a sellout. 22,092. WWE today runs 3 or 4 times a year at the Garden and can't sell it out. No. So this is month after month after month that Bruno would sell out, generally.
When you look at Bruno's matches, this nonsense that he was not scientific wrestler is not correct. He does the drop toe hold. He does the arm drags. How did he win most of his matches? Bear hugs, over-the-shoulder backbreaker. I just watched the match from April 14th, 75. It was the Greek death match. It was submission only. He beat Spiros Arion with a half Boston Crab. It's like, yeah, Bruno, it was great when he brawled, because when he did that comeback, and I think Hogan imitated that. Bruno's crouch and the individual pound on him and his comeback, I think Hogan basically adopted that as his kind of a comeback, but there's just no way you can compare the two. Forget it.
Well, I think, we had Bruno sort of in that transition, not just in wrestling, but in America itself, where the anti-hero was becoming more and more popular. And I think that in wrestling, they wanted to see more of an edge, and they wanted to see guys that were, brutal and that were, going to take the chair and hit guys with it. And that you were going to, we moved into an era with guys like the Road Warriors and, guys who were, punishing the Warlord and even like Big John Studd or whatever, guys that really beat the heck out of guys in the ring. Not so much that they were looking to try to pin someone or get them to submit, but just the raw punishment era of wrestling. And that's something that I don't think that Bruno was ever really a part of. And that's why I think maybe a lot of people have, the younger generation has a hard time respecting him, because he never got hit over the head with a fluorescent light bulb or, set on fire with barbed wire.
Now, wait a minute. George the Animal Steel, when he looked in your direction as fans, it was like parting of the Red Sea. And that was legitimate. They can't do that stuff today. I mean, Bruno had brutal matches with George Steele, Kowalski, Arion, Waldo Von Erich, Tanaka. I mean, no, he faced some brutal people, man. And they didn't hit him with the fluorescent light. That was silly.
They hit him with chairs.
Chairs. And tables, especially in Boston. They had used that big damn him and George Steele. They had a war in Boston. The plexiglass to be thrown into that. So he did go through brutality, and he was good. I'd say he was the best brawler we ever had, without a doubt, because, I guess with Bruno, he wasn't the tallest guy, but he was a gorilla, and our dear friend Johnny Valiant would always testify that. And even Nikolai said, Bruno, he's so strong, unbelievable. And it's like, yeah, without a doubt. You can just look at him and see, especially in his younger days, the man could take you apart. It would be, no matter, I don't care how big you are, he would take you apart. But Bruno did, and he wrestled the Sheik, the original Sheik too. The crazy Sheik, Iron Sheik we love too, but the Ed Farhad Sheik, Bruno was in some wars with him, man.
Yeah, well, it's just younger fans, they don't really respect someone unless, they're going through the flaming barbed wire covered glass table, glass covered table onto thumbtacks and inside a cage, it's that perception that, again, that because wrestling was slower, it wasn't as physical, but the thing was, you didn't have 20-minute promos, and 5-minute matches. Instead, you had maybe a couple seconds worth of promos, and then, the matches went, or no promos at all. In Bruno's day, he just went right into the ring. I mean, you can see guys waste a good 4 to 5 minutes now just walking to ringside. Yeah. And Bruno never did any of that stuff.
Time killers, that's right. That started around late 1983. And even Monsoon, when he'd be doing the commentary, would say, they've been in the ring 5 minutes, they haven't touched each other. And it's like, they were starting to stretch it out. And then it was like, come on, man. We were looking at the changing of the guard at that time because, as I say in the book, when it was real, the day the music died, January 23rd, 1984, when Hogan beat the Iron Sheik, it had to change. Our love affair, the people we love, were starting to get older, so the format was going to change, and it's like, okay, I accept it. I don't knock it, but it was certainly closed one door, without a doubt.
But didn't it open a huge door for Nikolai Volkoff? Because when he teamed up with the Iron Sheik, I went to a number of those matches. And you talk about for you, Bruno Sammartino generated the most heat. When I went to the Cow Palace and saw the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff up against the Junkyard Dog and Sergeant Slaughter, that place went completely nuts, tore the roof off.
I'm going to give you that one. The Mongols were still the best team ever when they hit in 1970, but Nikolai and Sheik, because, Nikolai was part of the Mongols when he was Beppo Mongol. But yeah, and see, 1984, they always talk about Hogan. Hey, hold it, Daddy. Nikolai Volkoff and the Iron Sheik had a lot to do with it, and Slaughter's feud with the Sheik, and of course Piper and Orndorff and the whole parade. But yeah, Nikolai and Sheik were a great team, but even Nikolai would tell you, because he never wore red in the 70s. Never. He was always black. Black trunks, black boots. He'd wear the white fur, but that was it. He never carried a Soviet flag. But when they cartooned him, and even he would tell you when it became cartoons, yeah, he made 10 times the money. Okay, but whatever. That's what people remember him. They came out with the dolls and everything else. So, hey, that's great. But Evan and I know him as a guy that wrestled Bruno for an hour in the garden, crushed apples. That was no baloney, man. Because I still would take that. I'm like, how the hell you do this? This is unbelievable. Give to me. And he crushes, it's like, holy mackerel. Because he had on his property, he had a nice farm. He had a 2-story barn. And my wife and I were there one day, and he said, talking to my wife, he said, Victoria, I'm going to have to lift the barn up a little. I'm going to put the jack. I lift it up, and then I put the brick in. And she said, okay, Nikolai, but how do you lift up the barn? I just pick it up, and then we'll slide it back in. It's like, he was a real-life Herman Munster, without a doubt. I mean, he could walk through the door by accident and say, brush the splinters off and go about his business. No problem.
Yes. Well, those are some great stories. Now, did you ever talk to him a lot about his time as a singles wrestler in the WWE and the WWF, like after his time with the Iron Sheik? He did do a number of things like against Sergeant Slaughter and the Junkyard Dog and stuff like that.
Yes. With the Sergeant Slaughter, Nikolai was the second of the other side of that coin. After Slaughter was done with Sheik, then it was Nikolai's turn. But Slaughter took a powder in December of '84 because there was a dispute over the merchandising or whatever.
G.I. Joe stuff.
Yeah, so then, Slaughter took a walk. So that left Nikolai, he's, in the middle of a hot feud, and that would have generated a lot of, what can you do? The guy's gone. But yeah, he enjoyed it. He did not like the Ted DiBiase bullshit. He didn't like that at all. That was embarrassing, and but it's the business. They want you to do it, so if you got to wear a dress, you got to wear a dress. And that's the way it works. Like Hollywood, they do the same stuff. They know you have the passion, and you want to be. It's not always about big money. Yeah, you like to make money, you got to pay bills, but they know you love it, and you're going to come back for more. So they don't treat you like a kid brother. They treat you like, hey, dance for me here. Okay, yeah. Now, here, chase this carrot. That's like, okay, that's how they handle it.
Yeah, no, that's something we were talking about last week, too. So it's a common thread that goes through, with wrestling, as far as I see it, it's that quest for fame and that quest for an audience. And let's face it, a lot of us are schmoes that have absolutely no other talent other than being ringside or in the ring. Like I had my dad's evil girlfriend ask me, why don't you do Shakespearean acting? I'm like, because I can't do Shakespearean acting. This is all I can do is go to an audience of random people and really annoy them. That's about the only talent that I really have. And I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to be a Broadway singer. I'm not going to be, and that wrestling, when people think it's pre-rehearsed, there's still so much of it that's improv.
Yes.
And that's either a skill you have or you don't have. But if it's one that's all you have, you're not going to be a really good actor in just about any other form.
I talked about this on Angelo's show just a few days ago, Wrestling with
the Future. Good show.
Good guy. And I had an argument when I was doing the movie Brush with Danger. They had a dialogue coach who's a big LA guru with the theater. So she said, Nikita, did you ever do any Broadway or any kind of live plays or any? I said, yeah, pro wrestling. I've done theater. She's like, that's not theater. That's got nothing to do with Shakespeare. I said, Jeannie, wait a second. We're in front of a live crowd. We get one take. We don't get to talk on the microphone. We have to pantomime to the crowd, okay? She didn't want to hear it. But remember, Evan, Jeff Archer's book, Theater in a Squared Circle, and it's like, hey, that hit the nail right on the head because that's what it is. But I'm never going to do Shakespeare. I'm either a cop or I'm going to be some kind of heel. And that's my comfort zone. If you want to take me out of that and make me some kind of lover or some kind of other bullshit, it ain't going to work. It's just like I see some guys, they try to do like a foreign heel gimmick, and it's like, come on, you know this guy's from Idaho or wherever, and it's like, this ain't gonna cut it. You look stupid. Don't do something that looks stupid. Do what you can do and do it well. That's the best.
But of course, we see the WWE constantly trying to fit the square peg into the round hole.
I love
And,
that. Square peg,
know,
round hole, yeah.
And
Guess what? They think these goofy people are going to come back no matter what. And some do, okay? But we would never accept that in our day, right, Evan? I mean, it's like if the Garden was Black Friday, if you didn't make the Garden work, the rest of the territory was going to collapse. So they had to sell it out. They had to make a profit. So they didn't play any games. Now, recently we talked about a show that I posted. Everybody said those matches were short that night for whatever reason. But they always had a WrestleMania style card. I mean, they had visitors from like Vern Gagne would come in, or all kind of different people from other areas would come in. And it was like, yeah, because you want that building filled. It was going to happen with Bruno no matter what. But after he left, you know, he needed a break without a doubt. After his first run, having the belt 7.5 years, it was like, oh, this is enough. And then, you know, Pedro, we loved Pedro, but the problem was he just wasn't catching on in the other cities. Like I described in the book when it was real, Bobo Brazil carried Baltimore for the summer of '73. And it was like, yeah, Bobo's a sellout. Put him in there with everybody and anybody. You got it. So, you know, after Pedro was starting to get a little bit, let's say, lagging with the other towns, that's when they basically, the story goes, they were stalking Bruno. It's like, we need you to come back. We need you to come back. And I think Bruno, if you ever notice, when he wins the belt the second time on December the 10th of '73, he's looking at it like, and I put this in the book. It's like, what the hell did I just do? It's like, I don't know. And he had no idea his neck was going to get broken. So it was like, oy vey. Because he actually got me started on glucosamine and chondroitin. It's a supplement that rebuilds cartilage. And I said, well, if it works for you, Bruno, it's got to help me with my bullshit injuries. You know, I mean, geez, you got the broken neck. So it does work too. And I don't sell it or have stock in it. But if you've got joint problems, glucosamine and chondroitin.
I got problems. They're not joint problems so much as they are. I broke my shoulder a few weeks ago.
Oh, man,
Yeah,
bud.
nice.
You're doing great.
Nice souvenir there for you.
Yeah. Holy.
Yeah. So
now X-rated. Oh, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, hey, if I'm gonna have to suffer, the rest of you have to suffer too. So one of the things that also I had a question about Nikolai Volkoff is that, you know, he was a fantastic tag team champion. I mean, some people say that the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff are the best tag team champions of all time, in their opinions, just because all the heat they generated. Yet Nikolai Volkoff never had a singles title, as far as I know. At least in the WWE, he never had WWF or WWF. He never had a singles title. Is that something that he ever was upset about, or ever mentioned that he wished he had?
No, not at all. Because with him, he was a great company man. Okay, he understood. Now look, here's a guy that came. He really did come from communism. He was in Croatia, and he was competing with the Croatian weightlifting team. They went to Canada, and he just took a left instead of going back to the right on the bus. And that's when he got lost in the crowd and found his way to Stu Hart, and then the rest took off from there. So he was always grateful for what he had. So he never complained. If you said, like he did with DiBiase, that goofy gimmick, he did it. They asked him to do it. He didn't like it, but he did it. So no, Nikolai was the biggest Bruno fan probably ever. He loved Bruno. And it's like everybody they use that word, you're a mark. It's like, we're all friggin' marks, goof. If we didn't love it, we wouldn't be in it. And Nikolai loved it. So, and he loved Bruno. So no, he didn't care. What do you want to do tonight? You know, how you want me to put you over? What are we going to do? Boom, boom, boom. And that's it. So he never had, in fact, he said, I hate carrying that damn belt, pain in the ass, son of a bitch that you got, you know, it got stolen one night. Or they broke into him and the Sheik, their room. They both blamed each other for it because they're out in the lobby, and Sheik said, "Oh, Nikolai, what the room we have?" And so, Sheik, we room 325. They go off, they do their thing. They come back, they've been burglarized. They stole the Sheik's medals. Okay, and it was like, oh my God, Nikolai said he's crying, tears rolling down his eyes. He said, "Well, Sheik, fuck your stupid medal. They stole my hot plate." He looked at him, "You Nikolai, son of a bitch," and then he started to laugh a little bit. So they were the odd couple, but they loved each other till the day Nikolai died, without a doubt.
Yeah, no, he's been very missed as far as I know. He did a lot of indie shows, and he did a lot of all-star shows where he would be, doing signatures and stuff like that. And even before this, I'd heard that he was really great with the fans, and even being a heel for all those years, people just had so much respect for him when they saw him in person.
The complete opposite of his character, without a doubt. He got a job with Baltimore County when he got done pretty much with wrestling. Housing inspector, but it was the kind of inspector that went out when complaints, when people had high grass and weeds and the house hadn't been painted, stuff like that. So he goes one day, it was an old lady's house. She had the high grass, and she said, "Sir, I have nobody, I'm by myself. I have no family. I can't do this." So he called, he said, "You know what? I could not give her no bullshit $500 ticket. I go after work. I cut her grass." I said, "Nikolai, God bless you. That is you, without a doubt." And he did it too. And that's the kind of guy he was. Give away pictures, dolls sometimes, because he would carry in his vehicle and people would recognize him. He performed my son's ceremony. I think he may be the only one. He became a preacher. He married my son 2 years ago. And that people were coming up at the reception, "Oh, Nikolai Volkoff, blah, blah." And a friend of mine, my old partner from the police department, was there. He said, "I can't believe everybody come up to him. He would talk. He would sign." I said, "Sure, that's him. That is not hard to believe. He's no, like, oh, I'm it and your shit kind of a person. Never. He was always and now, unfortunately, one of the best men at my son's wedding died. And he became good friends with Nikolai because he was having health problems, overweight, and they became close. And Nikolai was calling this kid almost every day because Evan, Nikolai with the health stuff, right?
Yeah,
he had the diets, he had all this, and if you wanted to get healthy, he would call you, he would talk to you, he would do everything. He didn't take money from people for that. I mean, geez, that was just his way of being who he was. And see, a lot of people, they thought they were cheating and say, "Oh, we get Nikolai Volkoff for this. We get Nikolai." It's like, you know what, asshole? He's not a dummy, but he just likes to be on the road and he likes to get away from home and keep active. So he didn't take and charge people a lot of money, but it was his way of getting out, and he would make some extra, pick up money here and there. So, when people thought they were pulling one over on him, they didn't.
Well, it to me seems like this perfectly tail ends into the Ronda Rousey stuff that we've been hearing this week. I don't know if you're familiar with the recent comments by Ronda Rousey.
No, I know who she is, the big UFC fighter.
Yeah, and she just said how much she hated the fans, how mad she was that she had to go on the road 200 days a year.
This was no shoot?
This just happened this week. She was saying that she wants out of the WWE forever and that she doesn't want to cut. She was mad that her angle, had fun play fighting with her female friends, but F the fans and it just like the opposite of what you just said about Nikolai Volkoff was what Ronda Rousey was saying, and how, because so many of them didn't like her performance in the WWE, the fans weren't all that, loving about her. That she felt so taken advantage of, even though I think the WWE paid her like $2.5 million or something like that for her, very limited appearances. And that tails further into the entire economics of what we've been hearing about the way the WWE is running the show this week. And I'd like, if you have both of your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, let me say, she should have thicker skin than that. All right. Especially being in that kind of business. Evan, you remember when Brush with Danger got released, some New York Times critic called it a racist movie. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Because there's a scene in the movie where one of the co-stars, she's getting robbed in an alley, and the two main stars, who are Asian, they come up and the woman says, "Oh, thank God, Asians!" And the guy said that made it a racist movie. Well, let me tell you, we toured that movie all over the country, and every time we did, there was representatives from Indonesia there, and it was probably 60% Asian audience. And I sat back and I'm watching, and every time that line came on, the whole place erupted in laughter. So it's like, that's what a critic does, and that's what fans do. They're going to criticize you. Okay, if they don't like you, they don't like you. What is the old story? If they're talking about you, hey, at least they're talking about you. They don't have to love you. You dumb, just accept it for what it is. But go ahead, Evan. You tell what do you think about it?
I happen to like Ronda Rousey. I think she's charismatic. I think for a quote unquote rookie, she was excellent. And I could see her getting upset that the fans, are obsessive, and some of these fans, they get up 6 a.m. I hate John Cena. I hate Roman Reigns. It's like some of these fans are annoying. They're annoying, and I get that. And I'm the first one to go. Don't be corporate apologists for Vince. You guys will spend $5,000 for a WrestleMania ticket, but you won't spend $5 on a GoFundMe for a legend in trouble. So yeah, I have no problem with somebody criticizing a certain portion of the fan base who are obsessive and sometimes cruel. So I happen to like Rousey, and basically what she was saying was, to paraphrase, I don't want to put words in her mouth, was that UFC was real. You were getting your brain scrambled, and WWE, was worked. And I don't think she meant it as any great insult. I just think, the other wrestlers, some did not react well to what she said, but it was truth-based. I mean, I didn't have a huge problem with it.
Well, I thought it was interesting that she brought up 200 days of work per year as being an incredible burden. And I was like going, that's 150 days off more than most wrestlers get, and again, she was being treated in the most, wondrous of fashions. Jim Cornette was talking about, she wasn't driving from Mississippi to, Alabama in the back of a pickup truck with like 4 other wrestlers that hadn't showered the night before, kind of thing. A lot of us indie folks have. I mean, I have gotten. I remember one indie show where the dressing room was the alleyway in between the two buildings, and they were able to put up towels between the walls, and that was the wrestlers' dressing room. That was as deluxe as we got, And I've seen wrestlers literally beg other wrestlers for enough money to get like a 59-cent cheeseburger over at McDonald's after the show's over, so that they don't pass out from hunger. Exactly. And so for someone like Ronda Rousey was getting paid, several $1 million and being treated as well as she was, at least by the WWE hierarchy. Maybe the other wrestlers and the fans didn't love her. I don't know. I think that rubs a lot of people, especially right now at this moment where there's so many people out of work. It did rub them the wrong way.
The truth is always somewhere in the middle. And how about Vince not, having wrestlers working 250, 300, or 350 days like our movie that Nikolai's in? How about giving them an off season, letting them heal, not running them down like, like old farm animals, and then, they're beaten up, they're in fear of losing their spots. Why does it have to be 200, 250, 300 days a year?
Well, it's because Vince McMahon has this gobble them up mentality. So he wants to have them all working for the WWE, and then when they don't meet any of his specifications, he tosses them aside. It's not like with the big roster that he had, he could easily find a way to rotate out wrestlers and give them the time off that they need. But he doesn't do that. He instead works them till they're completely run down, and then he just says, "Okay, we're done with you." Or like Luke Gallows and Anderson, he just puts them on the end of a string and just kind of dangles them around and says, just like you were saying earlier, that they know that the fame is going to keep them there, or a big contract is going to keep them there, even though they're not using them right, or they're not using them at all. I mean, Kurt Angle's a pretty good example too. I mean, he'd been on the shelf for a long time, and then the WWE just says, "Okay, you're gone." Not that, hey, we'll try to work you into NXT, or we'll try to work you in on SmackDown or something like that. It's just an all or nothing move by Vince. And I think America sees that now, and they're seeing that kind of ruthless, cutthroat sort of. I mean, Vince McMahon is maybe the ultimate corporate owner. If you just think about it and the way he treats folks, I think every head of every corporation wishes they could get away with the things that Vince McMahon does.
And that's because it never, at one point, I think somebody tried to impose sanctions on him, but it never materialized. And I don't mean wrestlers. I'm talking about a government body tried to say, you can't treat people like this. It goes against all of our standards, against labor laws and things like that, but it never materialized. So they never got a union. They never really got protection. So now you can just say, well, hey, yeah, I am done with you, so take a hike. That's it. Your contract's over with.
And getting back to the fans, the corporate apologists who go, well, it's always been like that. That doesn't make it right. Why are these guys independent contractors if they're working 200, 250, 300 days a year? Greg Valentine told me in the peak years when Nikolai was on top, Greg Valentine, etc., he said he worked 320 days. How are you not an employee? How is there no health benefits, pensions, 401ks? And then the fans are like, oh, they knew what they were getting into. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't know what their body's going to feel like 20 years down the road. Maybe they're not going to realize that the money is not going to be there, and some of them are going to have to push a broom after selling out Madison Square Garden. Don't be an apologist for corporate ruthlessness.
Well, the movie The Wrestler really does bring that home. I mean, that's a true fiction story there. And it's like, okay, so what do you do when you're done, or they're done with you, and nobody wants to give you that shot anymore? Just like you said, you're picking up a broom, or in that case, he went to work at a supermarket, and it's like, this ain't gonna work, man. This is just terrible. Nikolai got lucky because he was beloved in his. He stayed in that Maryland area for a lot of years. He was just outside of Baltimore City and Baltimore County, so he had a good base of people that said, hey, okay, let's give Nikolai Volkoff, let's take care of him. So they did. But if you don't have that, if you've been traveling, you really don't have roots anywhere. And what do you do at the end of the line? You're kind of stuck.
Yeah, you're a bouncer at a bar or a strip club, or pushing a broom, or you have, there are exceptions, of course. I don't want to paint a totally grim picture, but in many cases, these guys did not end well. They did not end well, and partly because there was no pension or anything. When you see a GoFundMe, this is another thing. The fans will go, all these GoFundMes are scams. No, they're not. No, they're not. Many of these guys are legitimately ill, or need a hip replacement, or need a knee replacement, or whatever the case may be, and they don't have the money. They just don't have the money. And please, please don't start with they all squandered it on wine, women, and song. Absolute nonsense. Some did, many didn't. Many didn't. They just never got paid what they should have.
The great Haystacks Calhoun. Now, he didn't chase women. He didn't do drugs. He ended up in and I got the story, I saved it. Before he died, he ended up in a trailer park. And he said, now, all right, look at me. Did I squander my money? No. but I had to pay for my transportation. And I had to get 3 seats on an airplane. I couldn't just get one. And how much do you think it cost every month to feed 600 pounds, and then going to the doctor and having troubles over the years? It's like, I didn't squander it. And he said I would never do it any other way. But, life is expensive. And people just think, well, they poured money into you. How come you're not putting it away? It's like, don't we all try to put it away? But you got to live.
Well,
in When It Was Real, Nikita's book, he writes about Mr. Fuji wrestling Pedro Morales for the belt, correct? Correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Fuji ended up ripping tickets in a movie theater when he was old. Okay, this is how some of these guys ended up. Okay? You got a billionaire lays off 40 plus people, and that's the way it is. It's just business. No, Ring of Honor are paying their guys still. New Japan
is, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ruthless is ruthless. Don't be an apologist for ruthless.
Well, and sometimes the wrestlers just can't handle the brakes being put on their career as fast as Vince wants to do it. One of the wrestlers that was trained at All Pro Wrestling, which is where I got trained, was Crash Holly. And his situation was extremely tragic. He's a very nice guy, very bright guy, a guy that was really approachable and all of that. But he confided in a lot of us that, when you have the combination of all that fame, you're being pushed so hard for a while. I mean, Crash had his time in there as hardcore champion, and then that silly 24/7 championship thing that was going around for a while. So he was in the WWE spotlight for a pretty good amount of time, but then all of that just went away almost immediately. That, it was one of those things where Vince, was fascinated with the character and then just said, no, I'm not fascinated with it anymore. You can just go, jump off the Empire State Building for all I care. And
it's like Toy Story. He gets bored with them after a while.
After a while, yeah. Even sometimes the while isn't very long. We've seen with Gallows and Anderson. He wanted to make them a big deal, or AJ Styles, or Nakamura, and then they wind up being in the mid card matches, before too long. And so I think one of the things is when you take all that away, and then you have all the pain-killing medicine that these guys are on. And one of the things that opioids really does, unfortunately, having suffered enough injuries, I can write quite a bit of a testimonial about how much I hate opioids. This recent shoulder injury, I took 3 tablets and then stopped after 2 days, after a broken shoulder. I tell you, opioids are one of the great evils in the world today. And wrestlers take opioids like people take Tic Tacs.
Yes.
And so there are some major emotional problems. We're also seeing with the I don't know if you saw the Benoit documentary with Dark Side of the Ring, but they talked about the CTE damage that goes on from all the concussions.
Yeah.
That wrestlers were just expected to shake those off. Well, those things create emotional levels of problems in guys that exacerbate the depression to the point where Crash couldn't take it anymore. And that's why he overdosed.
Look at Mick Foley. I mean, he took so many headshots that he was having all kinds of problems. Now, see, my wife has a brain tumor, and thank God it's under control. A lot of it was removed. She does not have disability from it except for fatigue, because she'll start at her day like a telephone at 40%. Okay, then you had to pace yourself and rest. This brain, I learned so much over the years dealing with it. If you just sit at the computer all day, you'll be tired, because this is working all the time, and it takes about 45% of your energy. So when you start to, even pro football with the NFL, okay, John Mackey, one from Baltimore, his wife Sylvia started the number 88 clause. That was number 88, whatever they called it, because that was his number, because the NFL turned their back on him. And it's like, yeah, he was wearing a helmet, but they're like rams smashing into each other's head. You're still having concussions. This is not meant to take that kind of punishment. You're going to have psychological problems. You're going to have depression. You're going to have all of these other issues that follow brain injuries. I used to think about kids in high school football, but I would certainly say now, from what I know, it's not a good idea, without a doubt. Especially at those ages, they're not fully developed skulls. They shouldn't be out there crashing their heads together like that. I'm definitely against it.
There's been plenty of high school football players who have been paralyzed.
Oh, yeah.
No joke.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
And so, we can't help but see that affecting the wrestling industry, except, Vince McMahon, again, doesn't want to acknowledge that there's anything wrong with what he's doing, or that there's any blame to be put at his feet for, basically meat grinding these folks into, non-existence.
It is.
The death trail that follows everything that Vince McMahon has touched. Again, I'm sure there are a lot of corporate owners that would like to be able to have a product that maimed and hurt as many people as wrestling does, and get away with it without getting sued.
And then you see them, not just falling on hard times, but when you go to a Cauliflower Alley or some other place where there are, and you look at them and it's like, they're all mangled up and crippled up, man. Is this what how you'd like to end up? It's like, man, if that happened in my factory, being just like a regular person, if I owned the business, it'd be like, man, they sue me out of existence if somebody ended up like that. But not there. It's just like, oh, well, that's part of the job, and sorry, but that's the way it ends up. And it's like, no, there's got to be something better than that. It's got to be. Well, didn't Jesse Ventura try it years ago? He tried.
Oh yeah, and he was blackballed out of the WWE because of it. Made him a governor, but couldn't do anything for wrestling itself. And as we see, the political influence of Vince McMahon over someone like Trump has allowed him to get wrestling listed as an essential business in Florida, where I know a lot of other people that are not considered essential businesses that you think would be, like dentists and certain medical doctors and things like that. They're not. Their businesses are closed, but so the WWE can toss people around in a warehouse somewhere. That is considered an essential business, and it is kind of like you have to cock your head and go, what exactly is going on here? When we see that Vince is going, New Japan says, hey, we can suspend operations, and Impact is, or trying to, or NXT is, but Vince just has to be the one form of entertainment that's still operating live when no one else can, is really something else. I never really thought that we'd be in a time where like wrestling would be the one thing that gets exempted from all live performances.
I would have never imagined it, without a doubt. I figured that'd be the last thing on the list, because people always had a tendency to look at it as if it was, as I described the other night, like pornography. That they brought it to a different level. But when we watched in the 70s, there weren't a lot of people that embraced it in the open. Yeah, they would at home, but like I would go to a show in Baltimore and I'd see people I was working for a bond company at the time, and I'd be like, hey, there's so-and-so, and she's over there. Wow. I didn't know they came to wrestling, but they would never talk about it. I would be with a little group that would discuss it. They wouldn't open their mouth because it was kind of like, I didn't want people to know that they watched this stuff. It's like, why? What are you ashamed of? What's the problem here, man? Everything got
like a roller derby, or
I loved the roller derby back in the 70s. It's another thing I talk about. The 70s was the greatest time of all sports, whether it be baseball, football, boxing. Who the hell hears about boxing anymore? When Ali and Frazier would go at it, the world stopped. And it was like, man, oh man, that was something people would talk about.
Well, those were also for free on TV on Wide World of Sports. You didn't have to pay a dime to see Ali Frazier. I remember as a kid, and Ali fought like 40 times a year or something like that. He was getting out there all the time. You didn't just have one boxing match that was overhyped and then is over in a minute and a half, and usually with some terrible performance by one of the boxers. Or as we pointed out, there was the guy in the last match who wore 40 pounds worth of costume down to the ring and said that exhausted him, so he couldn't.
Wilder.
Yeah, Wilder, exactly. Yeah, he exhausted himself. I'm sorry?
That was a big fight, Wilder and Fury. That was a money-making fight.
What was it that he wore? Because I don't know who this is.
He wore like a gladiator's outfit or something.
It's like a big thing of armor. It was like 40 pounds of armor. And he said because it was like a mile to the ring and he did all his like pre-match shenanigans and dancing around in it, he's like, I got so tired I couldn't actually fight once I was in the ring.
Meanwhile, Fury beat him 10 out of 12 rounds the first fight. It's all nonsense.
I mean, you should take a tip from the Ultimate Warrior. You just need some rubber bands and a couple ounces worth of makeup and, you know, a little extra for your nose, and you're ready to go.
Well, you walk out in a pair of tights like Bruno and don't look like a buffoon. How about that?
That's it. Nice and easy.
Do you think there's ever going to be like any sort of attempt to try to go back towards more old school wrestling and try to get away from this sort of stuff? Or are we always going to be stuck in sort of this escalating sort of like guys trying to out high spot each other for the entire match?
It can't be done because, first of all, back then, I guess we had an advantage. You didn't have the internet. So, you know, if I talk to Evan, being in New York, and back then talking long distance, your parents would murder you because that was expensive. Say, hey, Evan, what happened last night? That'd be the only way you'd find out what's going on in other territories. So they were able to keep it kayfabe better. And you're never going to bring that back because too much has already been out there. We already know what we already know. So it's like, no. It's like taking, let me think of her name, Raquel Welch. I mean, she's still gorgeous at her age, but she's not like she was in her 30s or 40s, and you're going to try to make her like a big superstar. It's like, that can't be done. So it's like, what we had. So now they are trying to outspot each other, and that's how they're trained. You know, when I was at a show last year doing some managing, watching, I'm not going to name any names, but I'm up close to the ring. It was females, too. God bless them, because the tougher man than I am, the stuff they were doing. And I'm like, wow. And it's like, you know, this is called wrestling, not spotting. But they keep trying to one outspot the other, you know, in our day, Evan, the 70s, you had a spot and that was it. Boom. Take it home. You hit somebody with a chair, they're done. That's it. They don't get up and say,
well, they called those things finishing moves. They didn't call them spots. They call them finishers.
Right. You go to the top rope. Mil Mascaras would do the flying body press, and that's the end of it. Now that's the beginning of the match, and it's like it all looks like the same shit. Nobody cares. What are you not getting? You're beating yourself to death, and nobody cares.
Nobody sells. Like nothing is sold.
That's a good point.
It's either non-sell or overselling something that you like say to yourself that if you just took a pile driver through a table, you didn't sell that, but then they chop you across the chest and you fall outside the ring, and then you lay outside the ring for 5 or 6 minutes while, since it's a three-way match, the other two wind up fighting each other for another 10 minutes. That doesn't make any sense either. Like, people will take, like, minor moves, they'll sell those for 10 minutes, but they won't sell the big moves that should knock somebody out for, you know.
Now, the match I talked about earlier, Spiros Arion against Bruno, when Bruno beat him with the half crab, afterwards, it was like 10 minutes for Arion to get out of the ring, selling that leg injury. And I mean, he worked. He should have got the Academy Award without a doubt. Whoever got it that year, take it away, give it to Spiros Arion, because I mean, that was perfect. And the people, they were loving it because they were laughing and happy. Hey, you son of a bitch, you got what you deserve, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't just get up and say, okay, you know, I missed a leap off the top rope and Bruno's crippling me with his half crab, and now I'll just dance back to the dressing room. He sold it like his cartilage was torn out. I mean, that's how you make it happen.
Let me just play devil's advocate for 1 second. I also get tired of the old school fans who do there's been no good wrestling since the territories. That's nonsense. That's nonsense because, for example, Kenny Omega and Okada for New Japan. That's art. That's art. These guys are going 45 minutes to an hour, every move in the book, plus wrestling, not just high spots, wrestling, psychology, and, to just dismiss everything over the course of 30 years, to me, is very narrow-minded. And some of the old school fans do that. I mean, a Brian Danielson, who's now Daniel Bryan, the matches I saw him have with Nigel McGuinness and Ring of Honor, that was like Dory Funk and Jack Briscoe. Those were beautiful matches. So you can't just say everything was better then. No, it was more believable back then, and you cared more, and the belts meant more, but you can't dismiss everything since 1989. Please.
You can't,
please.
because everybody that steps between those ropes is risking their life. So it's like, yeah, they're the very being, in fact. So it's like, yeah, you got to give them that honor. But please, before we lose touch, remember I said we should mention Bobby Duncombe, because there's another name. And that same card, I was watching the match he had with Victor Rivera. It was fantastic. Here's a guy that was 300 pounds. Rivera hits him with a drop kick from behind, knocks him out of the ring. And, I mean, he was dazed, but he gets back in, and then he gets in the ring, and Rivera hits him 3 times solid in the head with drop kicks. Not this half-ass bullshit where he, kicks his knees out. And, Duncombe was dazed. And there's another name, Victor Rivera. These guys from the past, they just, and you always talk about Ivan Koloff, Evan, not being in the Hall of Fame. That Hall of Fame, I think until they get a brick and mortar building, it's just a myth. It doesn't have the substance that Tony Villano did with his place. And now in Wichita Falls, theirs, because if you don't have a place where people can go and look and touch and feel things, it's not a Hall of Fame.
Well, the WWF did have their building in downtown New York. We all know what happened to that.
No, what happened?
Oh, the last time I was in New York City was when I visited the WWE. They had the restaurant and club in Times Square.
Yeah.
That was probably their best opportunity of putting together something like that. And we all know how that, But I heard that now the WWE is building, after firing all these people and declaring bankruptcy with the XFL, that the WWE is planning a $140 million building that they're going to be putting up somewhere.
That's been going for years too. We haven't seen it. It's like, you should. I mean, come on. You have the money for this bullshit XFL. You can't put together a Hall of Fame building? I mean, man, an honor.
But I'd be afraid of the Hall of Fame building because I think, someone might graffiti the walls saying, bring in Ivan Koloff. There's Ray Stevens.
He would be in it then. If they had a brick and mortar building, they'd have to put all the champions in it. It would be.
But they won't. I mean, we'll see Drew Carey and Kid Rock and Bellas, and I know that's the problem with it is that we'll see the people that we'll see Donald Trump make his way in there before we see guys like Ray Stevens or
Aldo Von Erich, who wrestled Bruno the most in the Garden, probably always a sellout, because I don't know that much about the 60s, but I'm sure it was close to a sellout. And it's like, yeah, these people got you to where you are today, all right? Maybe Grandpa and your father was promoting back then, but they brought you along, and they got you to where you are today. So that needs to be acknowledged.
Well, and that would be now when the WWE is really putting on these terrible empty arena matches. It would be nice for the WWE to, say, instead of showing you this meaningless match, why don't we show you, Bruno Sammartino versus Jay Strongbow in, an Iron Man match, or why don't we show some of the really classic, really great matches from a long time ago? They'll go back to say, show like The Rock again in something or Steve Austin in something, but they won't go back to like the 60s, and they won't do the time that it takes to educate today's youth and
They
the
want you to-
next generation.
They don't want you to talk about that.
Yeah, they're very upsetting to me, and
They
that
want
you
you
have to
blind.
go to
They-
YouTube.
You know, I subscribed to the channel for a while, to the thing on the network for a while, because I was still able to get some of the matches from the 70s. But then all of a sudden it was like, it was so hard to find this stuff on their menu. I couldn't just type in a name and then boom, all the matches with Chief Jay Strongbow come up. You got to go through these searches, and it's like, but everything keeps popping up with today's stuff in your face, and it's like, I said, screw it. That's it. I'm dropping the subscription because I can't find what I want. I don't want to see this shit. And I don't want to see ECW. I want to see WWF in the 70s. And if you can't provide that for me, then go to hell. I'm not going to be a part of it.
Your thoughts, Evan?
The network emphasized a lot of bad reality shows. They had some hidden gems, they called it, where you'd see a Luthez or Killer Kowalski, but it wasn't a lot. It was as obviously, as Nikita said, more geared towards the current stars and all of their pay-per-views and such. But I would love to see whatever house shows they have from the 60s or 70s, whatever they actually have on film. I would pay $10 a month for that, but they don't prioritize that.
Yeah.
And
they were on the network with 24/7. I loved that because every month it would be like Rocky Johnson, Iron Sheik, and then you were seeing these great matches. And then they stopped that to go to the internet. So then when they did that, that's when you got all of this other shit. And it's like, I don't want to see that. I want to see what I want to see. And I'll give you $10. I'll give you $20 a month if you put on what I want to see.
I would say on a WWE pay-per-view today, let's say it's a 3-hour show and they have a dozen matches. There's probably 3 or so that are worth seeing, that are quality matches. But you're too numb to enjoy it by the time they come on because
there's a pre-show.
You have the pre-show. You have the bad comedy. You have guys who can't talking. By the time you get up to that one good match, an hour 45 into it, you're like brain dead. So, I'd rather watch.
You know that the next night on Monday night, they're going to show all the best stuff that happened anyway.
And have rematches the next night of the same match.
Yeah, they'll have a rematch of the same match. They'll have, or they'll have some variation of the match you just saw, and they'll play replays of what just happened yesterday on the next day's show. So that's how they filled 3 hours. Like, one thing that when we were younger, the shows were much tighter, and they really didn't have a lot of excess time to just blow on showing reruns or having the picture-in-picture and running ads during the same time.
Let me just say something. I was in Korea with my wife last year. My wife's Korean, and we were watching wrestling, WWE wrestling on Korean TV. Mm. And what they do is they let the matches finish, and then they have a bunch of commercials. They don't cut into the match with 7 commercials, then let the match go on a few more minutes, then have 7 more commercials, which totally takes you out of the action. They have more respect for the viewer. See, personally, I think AJ Styles and some of these guys are great artists. Let AJ Styles and Cesaro wrestle for 20 straight minutes without a break. I'd watch that. I would enjoy that. These guys are wrestlers, okay? But, again, they're emphasizing all the nonsense. And it's stultifying. Raw is like penance for sins I committed in previous lifetimes. I'll tell you a funny story. I don't want to dominate it, but guy gives me a comp to the Garden. I'm sitting through a SmackDown taping. I walked out in the middle. It was ear-shatteringly loud. I'm in a sea of like little kids with their parents. It's like Pavlov's dogs. The music comes on and they all get excited. Then they have like a 4-minute match that is utter crap. I go, I got to get out of here. because I'm thinking Bruno, Billy Graham, Roddy Piper, Iron Sheik, Nikolai. I'm like, this is like upsetting me. I walked out. They go, I can't take it anymore. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't take that. In that building, that's sacred ground, man. No way.
Exactly. I'm like, look what they did to wrestling. It doesn't even resemble what it was. And again,
It's not supposed to, I don't think. That's why it's called wrestling entertainment. And that's why I think a lot of people get confused. They don't want to have wrestling. Back to your question, buddy. Do you think it would ever go back? No, because you would have to resort back to wrestling, and they don't want that. They don't want
that. I saw John Cena and Bray Wyatt have an excellent match at the Garden. I saw John Cena and Roman Reigns have an excellent match at the Garden. They are capable. It's just they de-emphasize the wrestling. It's all about the... I saw Gallows and Anderson come out at the Garden, and they were singing, and they did not wrestle. I go, I'm going to put a gun to my head. Okay? One of the greatest tag teams in the world. They came out and sang and left. I go, I can't believe this. Okay?
Yeah, well, it's a difficult state that we're in because Vince has so much success that no one can tell him, nobody around him is capable of ever saying, Vince, this is a terrible idea. Let's not do this. Let's, everything from, the next turn for the big show, or let's, have that terrible wedding with Lashley, the Bobby Lashley wedding,
Somebody told me the Big Show has turned 51 times. I don't know if they're exaggerating, but Nikita and I will talk about Spiros Arion turning 45 years ago, or Peter Maivia, or Larry Zbyszko, where it meant something. Now it's a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's more like, what time is it? Oh, okay, Big Show's, it's ready to turn again. Let's just go check our watch,
That's why the other day when it came up about Victor Rivera, unfortunately, they were bringing him back at a time just before Maivia's turn. So it's like, you can't take that heat away. So Victor, you're just going to come in as a heel, now managed by Blassie. Blassie said, I took him out of the welfare line and I gave him a new life. And that was it. So it was just flat. It was still Victor Rivera and doing great matches, but he didn't have the appeal had he got the big push like they gave Maivia when he was going to do his heel turn. But those days, it just wasn't going to work. If they had, now the last one before that, Arion was in 75, Maivia's was in 78, and then the Zbyszko's was in 80. They did Jimmy Valiant back in 71. That didn't really go like a house on fire, but it had its substance without a doubt. But it was like these things are spread apart because if you, just like we're talking about, you do it too much, it's got no meaning and nobody cares, and it's just like, okay, let's, what are we going to have dinner? Is this over with? Let's go.
Back then, they would have a cage match at the Garden, and it meant something. Back then, they would have a battle royale, and it meant something. Because they did it like once a year, where it was special. Now they'll open a Raw with a cage match. Like, why are these guys in a cage? What's the feud? What's this about?
No, it's, we were talking last week about pretense and building a feud and the booking elements of it, and it's again something that's so lacking in today's nobody wants to tell a storyline over a year's time or something like that, like the way that you had like the Greg Valentine versus Tito Santana Intercontinental feud, which was that one ultimately wound up in the cage. That was the one that everyone was really excited about in WrestleMania. And that was a real like payoff for a year-long feud that people have been following the whole time.
Now, in honor of Bruno, remembering him, and this has nothing to do with my book because I only cover up to 79, the greatest feud was with Zbyszko, but that had legitimacy, again, true fiction, because we watched Larry since 74, being Bruno's protege, and it was genius. It was a great move. It wasn't some bullshit thrown together in 4 or 5 tapings. It was like, this really is a history between two guys, and then to have this teacher versus student thing, that was beautiful and well done. And then all of a sudden, it's just like we're watching it, and it's like, what the hell is going on here? Why is Zbyszko acting like? And then perfect. And Bruno, I still, like I told Angelo the other night, I think he really took some legitimate shots because he bled like, oh my God, unbelievable. I mean, it was a puddle of blood. He really got laid open on that. It was like, you had to do it. That was, if you're going to do it right. And they did. And man, wow, that was beautiful.
And they had that huge cage match at Shea Stadium to finish it off. The Loser League town.
You look at the professionalism of Larry Zbyszko. He couldn't get in there and say, okay, well, I'm going to beat Bruno. It's like he had to do the cat and mouse. Bruno's going to kill me if he catches me. Just run his mouth, kick him in the balls, and run out of there until the cage match. So that was great because it's like, look, Larry, if he gets a hold of you, he's going to kill you. And everybody knew it. And it was like perfect because we were going out of our minds. We wanted Bruno to murder him. And he almost did the first time, and then the second time Larry runs away, and then they have the cage match. It's like, that's great. That's how you do it. It's like playing a fish on the hook, man. That's beautiful.
We're getting close to right about an hour here, but I wanted to know if you had any final thoughts about Howard Finkel passing away. Did you guys ever get a chance to work with him? Or
I loved Howard. I got to know him over the years. He was the biggest fan too in wrestling. Howard loved what he did because he loved wrestling, and he was never ever the kind of guy of, again, like Nikolai, to say, you know who I am. He would always take time. He loved being acknowledged because, you know, it's kind of like, I'm the ring announcer, but Howard, you have this status, man. You know, you represent something to us. You're there. You're at the Garden. You're making the announcement. And a lot of the voiceovers for the local shows, he did that.
That's right.
A lot of the stuff you would hear, you know, this week coming to Baltimore, Greg Valentine to meet Jay Strong, and that was Howard. He would be doing that. So Vince did it for a long time, then Howard took it over. So I was sorry to hear when he took sick and things were getting bad, and sorry to hear that he passed away because I was hoping that he'd get to read my book. I don't know if he ever did. Somebody there was supposed to try to get it to him because I know he would love it, and because he was a big fan, and he was, you know, God rest his soul. He was a wonderful man.
Did you ever have a chance to meet the Fink?
Me personally? Or Evan?
No, I was going to say to Evan.
Yeah, I met him several times. I mean, I'm not going to exaggerate the relationship. I mean, always gracious, always friendly, always down to earth, as Nikita was saying. But I never really knew him on a friend basis like I did with Nikolai and Johnny Valiant and so many of the other guys we've lost, you know, along the way. But I just think it's perfect that Nikita's here today on the second anniversary of the passing of Bruno. And you should read his book, When It Was Real. And why is it called When It Was Real, Nikita?
Because, you know, I do explain that, yeah, from day one, my mother's sitting there saying, yeah, no, that's all phony. It's like, Mom, tonight I'm not going to sit there when you watch Marcus Welby and tell you he's not a doctor all night. Let me enjoy it. You know, we could believe it. We did suspend our belief because they made it believable the way it was presented. And a quick story, The Rock's mother bought a copy at Cauliflower Alley last year. And I talked to her the day before, telling her stories about her father and, you know, what a great guy, how he interacted. But when she saw that, she said, you know what? I didn't know that was your book until later on. She's like, but the title, because that's what my father tried to make it real. I said, well, they did a good job because it's like when Lou Albano wrestled Bruno at the Baltimore Civic Center. I mean, that's all you needed. You could have the rest of the boys off for the night. It was a bloodbath. And we went down to the ring afterwards, and it was like blood all the way to the dressing room. And it's like, this is no bullshit. This is no blood capsule. Lou Albano was bleeding like he was a gunshot wound. Unbelievable. And, you know, Lou was goofy. He'd be slicing stuff. So, you know, it's like, but it worked, you know, and Bruno would nail him. And it's like, Lou goes down and, you know, he's cut. It's like, man, I guess we were sadistic maybe. But, you know, that's human nature. Because Gorilla Monsoon used to say it best. He said, people are basically sadistic. Because, they go by a traffic light, they're looking. They got to see what's going on. It's like, what the hell do you want to look at? You want to see somebody mangled up? Keep driving, you goof. But we loved that. It was a great catharsis, and I think the world needs that today. That's why we're at each other's throats a little bit too much. Back then, wrestling would let us relieve that.
Yeah, let me just say something about that. We have on the internet wrestling fans who are conservative, wrestling fans who are liberal. But when you go to a wrestling show, everybody's friends. Everybody gets along. Same with music. Okay, it's like a place. It's like even ground, and you're not judging each other. And wrestling is a great catharsis. And what I tell people about wrestling is, it's what you did with your grandfather or your father or your uncle or even your mother, whoever it may be, and it's among your greatest childhood memories. These memories have deep meaning to us because from 1974 to 1980, my dad died in 1980, he took me to wrestling every month. These are among my greatest childhood memories. And, so when somebody says, the other day, some guy says to me, "Oh, they're just actors." I said, "Well, they're not acting with their, hip replacement, shoulder replacement, 3 divorces, or their kids, not talking to them because they were on the road 300 days a year. Okay, that's not acting. Okay."
I say, hey, look, chump, they're their own stuntmen too. Okay, if you want to look at it like that.
Yeah, I've had wrestlers say to me, "Evan, I'm always in pain." After the careers are over, I'm always in pain. And you guys mentioned briefly before, I'll go to a convention and, there's a legend that I loved as a kid in a wheelchair. And it's heartbreaking. I saw Harley Race in a wheelchair. It broke my heart, man, because I remember Harley Race coming to Madison Square Garden, wrestling Dusty Rhodes and wrestling, for the NWA belt with Backlund versus Rhodes, belt versus belt. And Harley Race was magnificent. And then you see him and he's in a wheelchair and the toll that's took on him. Don't call this guy an actor. Come on. Or appreciate how great a performer this guy was to get 22,000 people to hate you. That's great acting.
And don't dare use that F word, fake, because that one, I want to knock your block off, because there's no way that was ever the word fake. You can forget about it. There may have been some predetermination and things like it, but there's nothing fake about it.
I agree, fellas. It's people pay too much of a price in human lives and in everything they do. And it's all for the fame element of it. It's all because we want to get an audience and people to believe what we want them to believe. And that's why we go through all of this stuff.
Evan hit the nail on the head, just like in the 360 Days, the movie. It wasn't just the injuries. They were separated from the family, okay? And that takes a toll on you and, of course, the family, because then they feel like you don't care, you don't love them, and the kids say you're not there. And it's like, man, you got to make your way in life. Square peg in a round hole was a great analogy, buddy. But, I got to be the square peg in the square hole. How I fit there, it's not easy. And I want to be home. I want to do the right thing. I want to make everybody happy and pay the bills. But I got to be happy, too. I'm the guy in this skin. So, this is what's driving me. I got to do it.
Yeah. So you could see Nikita and Nikolai in Wrestling Then and Now on Amazon Prime, absolutely free. So we go to Nikita's house. Right?
Back then, that was beautiful. And by the way, I had just been out of the hospital 10 days from prostate cancer surgery. And I always like to mention, guys, get tested. The blood test is what saved my, and today's the surgery. They go through your belly button. It's easy peasy today. They filleted me like a fish. Evan came down along with Scott Wilson. We love Scott, beautiful person. They came down with Dwayne Walker, but Evan was like the Jewish mother. He was, sit down, take it easy, I was like, Evan, I'm okay. And I got a catheter and all this other stuff. The show's got to go on. We got to do this, man. Nikolai comes over, so it was beautiful.
And Nikolai's also in 350 Days, which you can see free on Amazon Prime and Tubi. So, over the years, we did a lot of stuff with Nikolai, and I just love that guy. I thought he'd live to 101, not 71. It's heartbreaking.
Well, he carried a big load for a lot of years. The skeleton was there, but the organs just can't carry that kind of load. It's just too hard. 300 plus pounds for all those years. It takes a toll, and it's horrible, man. It broke my heart without a doubt. And I had just, like I said, he married my son, and we had just spent a couple of months before that a great week together with all of that preparation and rehearsals. And it's like, man, this was too much fun. And then to find out he's gone, it's like, no, I don't even want to hear this. And, I said it the other day, Evan, the older I get, the more people I'm leaving behind. And it's geez, this is getting too damn hard. I don't want to see any more. I really don't.
I lost my mom and 10 friends, including Johnny Valiant and Nikolai, in about a 2-year period. So a pandemic is easy in comparison. Oh, man. That was
you guys will continue to stay safe. Nikita, do you want to give one more plug for your book and any other things you'd like for people to pay attention to?
When It Was Real, you can get it from crowbarpress.com, Scott Teal's site. He sells it. I don't. CROWBAR press.com. That's Scott's site. And he's got a bunch of other great books on there, too. And
he did an Ivan Koloff book.
Yes.
Yeah. Scott Teal's done some great work over the years. Support him also.
Yes, and we're all going to be doing a forum May 2nd and 3rd. It's a coronavirus thing. Everybody's distancing, and a lot of authors are going to get together over the course of 2 days. Follow me on Facebook. Evan, he'll have it too. Evan's on it. What is it called? Evan, you're going to be on there too.
I forget the name. It's May 2nd and May 3rd.
Mark out for authors. That's what it is.
Yeah. Kenny Casanova set it up.
Kenny Casanova. He's a wonderful guy, too. So, be on the lookout for it. Yeah, type in Kenny Casanova on Google, and that will come up. Or if you follow me and Evan, we'll have everything posted. I already posted. I'll post more. That'll be a great thing. People, everybody, every half hour, somebody's going to be on and talk about their book. And, hey, when we all say we're not just pushing our book, we're pushing the memories. Like Evan said earlier, these are great memories for people to, hey, we're not charging. Nobody's getting rich from this stuff, please. And it's not, today you go to McDonald's for 2 or 3 people, it's more expensive than buying the book, believe me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you being our guest today on the show. You've made it very special. I really hope that we can have you again in the future as a guest. It's been great. And any last words, Evan, that you'd like to have, and we can end the show?
Yeah, absolutely. R.I.P. Nikolai, Johnny Valiant, Bruno Sammartino, Tiger Khan, Fred Giabold, my radio man, Petra so on. We've lost a lot of great people along the way. And there's 50 others, so I don't want to start a long list.
We'll throw the Fink in there, though, while we can remember.
Yeah. So dedicate the show to all of them.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the show today. You guys have been great.
We got to do a Fred Giabold tribute one day, Evan.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that guy, yeah.
All right, well, we'll have another great guest next week, and looking forward to another show. Thank you so much, guys. Good day.
До свидания.